Hello and welcome to the RainStorm with Ryan Rain. I am Ryan Rain. I have the face for radio and the voice for newspaper. And today we're going to let the floodgates open on Caleb Kitchens. Caleb, welcome to the show.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Man, it's been a while since I've seen you. December, we did the dedication to Bam in Augusta. How you been since then?
I've been good. That was a very emotional show, I think, for everybody. Anytime you're at a wrestling show, adrenaline starts running high and everything. So I think with that show, I think that it was even more than usual. But
Right.
since then, I've just been working on a few projects.
All right. First time you've actually competed at a live wire show in a while. Jason Gold didn't have the shiny pants he was known for, though.
That's true. Interesting story about those. I actually only ever had the one pair made, and I made a huge slip up, and I left them in the trunk of my car that I then traded in, and so they are gone. I didn't have
Um,
time to get a new pair made for that show. It's kind of last minute for me.
so there is somebody in the CSRA with shiny pants, and they don't even know the value of them right now.
That's correct. They don't know that those are the shiny pants.
Wow. So if anybody is listening to this show and you have shiny pants in the trunk of your car, or you're working at a dealership and you stole them out of the trunk of a car, you're on to something, guy. You,
Yeah, yeah. Hit me up on Facebook. I'll give up to at least $9.99 for the return.
you heard it here. We'll make some wanted posters for them. Put them on the Rainstorm Facebook page.
Have you seen these pants?
Yeah. All right. So going we've gone back to the shiny pants days. What were some of the earliest memories of actual wrestling that you remember?
Oh wow, for me, do you mean like television wrestling or just for me personally?
Just personally, like either seeing it on TV, going to them, or
Oh yeah, definitely. I didn't go to my first live show until I was probably an adult, but I used to watch it on TV all the time. That was really the main activity that I had that I kind of had in common with my dad. Is he was very much an outdoorsman, and I'm very much a indoors sort of computers, video games, movies and that kind of thing. So wrestling was like a common interest that we both had, and so he was a huge Hulk Hogan fan, and I liked Sting and DDP and guys like that. So we were kind of at the opposite ends of that when it came to WCW because he had grown up watching Hogan, and so even though it was now Hollywood Hogan, he was a loyal Hulkamaniac.
did you watch much of the WWF product, or was you pretty much straightforward the WCW guy?
It was just WCW. I actually did not, other than like a show here or there, I did not watch a full like episode of Raw or SmackDown until about 2000.
Okay. So you really didn't get too much into WWF until after the Monday Night Wars started winding down and WCW was losing pretty much.
Right, and that actually worked out because I was watching when Shane, storyline bought WCW and they did the invasion, and so I was already familiar with those characters, and those were the characters I was really interested in seeing was the WCW stars.
All right. So and what made you want to get into the wrestling business?
Oh man, I had just seen it on TV so much. I used to go to school and get in trouble, for trying to do wrestling moves with my classmates. I was a huge DDP fan as a child, so if you made me mad in school, then you got a diamond cutter, no questions asked. And I stayed in trouble for that all the time. My
Yeah.
mother can verify that I stayed in trouble constantly for it.
I know DX has gotten me in trouble in school quite a few times.
Oh, I can only imagine if I had been watching, the Attitude Era instead.
Yeah, it was not the best. I mean, you had Steve Austin there, but for some reason I chose to go after DX, and I did not get candy one day, so I told the teacher to suck it.
I
That
bet
was
that
not.
went over real well.
I did not get recess for about a month, maybe 2 months. I don't remember what it was, but so how did you actually get into indie wrestling from there?
Oh man, so that's a kind of long answer, so I hope you're prepared. So
All right,
I um I started in the backyard. I'm not gonna beat around the bush on that. So
right.
me and some of my friends had a ring in the backyard, and we would go out there and just script these. You know, it it was what it was. We would script little matches, and you know we had no idea what we were doing. Um, and then one day, some guys from a company called Flatline Championship Wrestling showed up. They brought their entire roster. We were kind of intimidated because we were like, who are all these guys in the back, that just randomly showed up? Um, and they talked to us after the show, and we ended up kind of getting recruited by them. We came out to their practice ring, which was a lot more sophisticated than ours, and we learned how to actually work. And we got trained by them. We were very fortunate, and so we started wrestling for Flatline Championship Wrestling. Initially, they only wanted about three or four of us, and then eventually it ended up being about 6 or 7 out of the 10 guys, 10, 11 guys we had out there.
About who all was in this initial group?
Oh man, I don't want to call anybody out, but it we this is where we came up with the Common Man. Richard Neal is an awesome guy. He came up with that gimmick completely off the
Right.
top of his head. Um, and then Oz Knight was part of that group. Charlie Anarchy was part of that group. Damon Rashad was part of that group. So a lot of guys that are still in it now and have come a very, very long way from those days.
Okay. So and you guys move over to FCW. And about what time period was this?
This was in like late 2005, early 2006,
Okay.
when this started happening. So the first show we ever came to, it was just like, you guys are going to put the ring up and you're going to be security, which kind of just consisted of us standing around at the time. And I mean, we were just happy to get 5 minutes in like an actual legitimate ring at that time. Um, so and I try to think about that a lot. The phrase goes around in the business that you're never done paying dues. And so, whenever I go somewhere and I help set up or anything like that, I try to think about like that moment where it was like, really, I get to help put this ring up, and so we considered it a privilege just to be there.
All right. Was this at Patriots Park yet, or?
It was, yeah, it was at
Okay.
Patriots Park. So they had been doing some sort of, they had done some yard shows that were kind of similar to what TWF did. So they were legit, but they weren't, but they were still not at a venue. So they had
Right.
just made the move to Patriots Park at that time, and
Okay.
and we were starstruck. I mean, we had maybe performed in front of 40 people, and you know, most of those were like parents and neighbors and high school friends. So when like 200 people showed up to that first show, I mean, to us, we might as well have been in Madison Square Garden.
Because I first met you, I think in 2006 at TWF. I
Yeah,
think it
probably
was
so.
you, Cruz, and it was Cutter at the time
Yeah,
came out.
yeah.
And I
There's a
was
there's a good photo of that out there.
yes, there actually is probably will be in this video.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to say six was there,
Well, six
and
came in later. I remember Cruz had originally brought Charlie and I up there,
okay,
and then we told Six about it, and he eventually made the trip up there as well. And the roster out there just kind of grew exponentially. I mean, it sort of became the place to sort of even if you weren't on the show, just to show up and kind of network and socialize with the other workers in the area.
And even if you weren't on the card, you eventually would be on the card that night because, by 2007, there would be 11, 12 matches on a card out there. So,
Oh yeah, 13 match card, bell time 9 p.m.
oh yeah, of course. So everyone got a chance out there, but, that's where I met the majority of you guys. And, between Chase and Six, being the front runners of TWF FCW, kind of just led to this whole, and, Chris Main was there, and it just led to this whole invasion angle thing, which I thought was insane. And the whole invasion show, which was actually at Patriots Park, was amazing to me. You know,
Right,
I, I wasn't a part of it, but just being a fan there, watching it,
right. And I,
mind
I actually
blowing.
was not a part of that show either. I was kind of mainstay on the Flatline roster, but I had just lost their Rage Championship. So I was kind of on a downswing. I had a really long run with it, um, and was kind of on a downswing. And with it being one show versus another, you don't have room for both rosters. So
Right,
I had to sit it out. Which now looking at it, it makes sense, and I probably would have booked it that way. At the time, I definitely did not have that opinion. I was pretty upset about not being on the show. But in hindsight, that was just basically me wanting my chance in the spotlight at that time.
right. I remember there was some quality talents back then that were not booked, and looking back on the show, there were some guys that I think they were only there because of their gimmick to kind of fit. I won't name drop anybody here, but I don't really think they fit on the card. Like Coleman, he wasn't on the card. He was just starting out, and look what he ended up doing.
Yeah,
Oz, he wasn't on the card. He ended up, you know, he's still going today. You
yeah.
know,
He actually won that same Rage Division championship not too long after that, and then we had a feud over it. So it actually ended up working out great for everybody, I think, because the show drew a lot of buzz, and I think and I'll be honest, I doubt anybody from Columbia County went to that show and was like, "Oh, I really got to go check out TWF." But I think
no,
some people from the TWF audience were like, "Hey, I need to go check out FCW."
yeah,
Advantage to them, in that one. But the TWF had the better fans. I mean, just hands down. I mean, they were more vocal. They really supported their guys. They were very loyal to them. Whereas, what FCW was more of, it was just a wrestling show that you came to, you bought a ticket, you sat down, and that was it. I mean, I don't think that they really had a loyal following at that time, at least not of the same. They didn't have as vocal of fans if they did.
yeah. That was the first show that I had been to at Patriots Park. You know, um, and to get carloads of people from the valley to leave the valley, that's impressive in its own right. To get a couple people, but to get carloads of people to pay money to leave the valley for something, that right there says volumes. And I just feel like it was a great show. And yes, I know several people that came and just stayed and kept going to flatline shows, even without TWF. The only people that were still there were just Darkness, Chris Main, Hunter was there a couple times, and then DIE came in a couple times. But it was really good stuff, and and you were there more frequent, and doing the professor gimmick.
Yeah, and actually, it had evolved into David Yale at that time. Um, so the professor was kind of the. I hate to say this 'cause it sounds terrible, but the professor was the yard version. The professor wasn't a gimmick, it was just a moniker,
Right.
and it was just I called myself the professor. So when I got into FCW, they were like, we could do something with this, but let's make it more of a gimmick. So that's kind of where David Yale came from, and then later we kind of just added that professor name back to it, you know. So
Mhm.
I think you know I got ring announced as like the Professor David Yale a couple times, so that was cool. But yeah, I mean they really helped me understand what it meant to be a character and to make that sort of make sense to people.
And that was the place to be. At
It
the
was.
time in 2007, 2008. You know, going from Patriots Park, I think even to the fairgrounds, I believe it was
That's right, right across the street. Yeah.
for a while. Yeah, so until what, 2009, I believe, or was it
Yep.
2008?
As far as I
2009.
know, it was 2009. Now I was not there at the end of Flatline Championship Wrestling. I had walked away from the business for a little while at that point. So I wasn't there for the last show or anything like that. But I mean, Patriots Park is an amazing venue. It's been a huge part of my life. It's been a huge part of wrestling in the Southeast.
Right? FCW did try to run another time there with another promotion, and then that promotion ended up flopping terribly. Um, the WECW show there.
I was there for that with the six-sided ring.
Oh, the Six Sides of Hell.
Yeah,
That,
that was the worst ring I've ever been in, hands down. I would have
yeah,
rather wrestled on the floor. I faced Oz Knight at that show.
yeah. Think there were 5 people
Yeah,
at the
it was
two
hardly anybody.
shows. That those I don't know if they just didn't put posters up or what, but I
Well,
know the ring actually broke during my match. So I
well that
just
it wasn't working very well before that, so we don't
yeah.
have to worry about that.
Well, all right. So 2009, you step away for a bit.
Yep.
Where did you go from there?
So I really just try to focus on myself and my shoot career. Um, and then slowly but surely, I kind of got drawn back into it. Um, I think uh, what drew me back into it was actually Oz called me up, and he was going to do a promotion in Harlem called Genesis Wrestling. Um,
Right.
and so started up Genesis. He called me and said, "Hey, I want you to come back in. Um, I think that you've got a lot to offer us." And originally, I was hesitant to to join up because I was like, I haven't been in a ring in 2 years, so that was kind of rough for me to kind of adjust because you lose it, and I really regret that at this point in time, taking 2 years off because you just lose so much of you lose your if you don't stay in shape, then obviously that goes, but you lose sort of your ring instincts and just the way that you move. Your body changes over 2 years so much, so you kind of lose like any of that muscle memory that you had,
Right.
or at least I did.
Oh yeah, I agree. So the Genesis wrestling, I went out there a couple times. Um, short-lived, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was relatively short lived. The ring that wasn't in great shape, so that was kind of an issue. Um, we didn't have a stable or legitimate venue for it, so I mean it was really more about just fun and trying to evolve as performers.
Right.
But there were some good matches and some good feuds that went on out there, and there were a few shows where there were some pretty nice sized crowds considering. So um, I don't regret it. Definitely, I think that had that not happened, then I may not have stayed in the business or may have never come back in the first place.
I know Genesis. That's where we kind of got the general idea to do the Elite faction, which would later resurface different variation, later in Livewire, which I feel was a better involvement of it. But it's where we kind of got to do it and see what we could do with it, you know.
Yeah, I remember that. That was
And
uh
it was a great experiment with it, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was really cool, I thought, at
Yeah,
Genesis. And then when I came back into Livewire later on, or well, there was the shock value era, but we'll more on that later. And when I got to see it again later, I was like, wow, these guys have really like defined this.
yeah. See, and in Genesis, you know, it was me, Coleman, um, Hilton, and they threw Jay with us because they wanted to establish him as an actual heel. And I was like, all right, well, that's cool. All we're doing is just beating down on people, so just join in with that, I guess. That's neat. And then the next show, I was the only one there because Coleman was going to the army. Hilton was MIA. Jay was somewhere, and they're like, "Well, we're gonna have you go over on one of Don's other characters because we don't know what to do with you." I was like, "Oh," and it was kind of the end of that whole elite there. But off of the one show that we did, you know, we were able to gauge an idea, and it was a great learning experience there. And you know, I got to work Oz too, and you know, that's the first time I ever got to do that. And it's something I felt that was building since back at the Invasion show, which was my only interaction I had at the Invasion show, which was pretty fun to do that too. So it all came full circle at the Genesis show, so that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you about Oz. I mean, in the ring, I think he moves really well, and we have so much experience working each other. I mean, we've easily had 60 to 100 matches against each other. I mean, I hate to give you that wide of a ballpark, but it's somewhere in there.
All right, so you know after Genesis, pretty much that's when you come over to Livewire about 2012ish. I would
Yep,
I would
and
say.
sort of into 2011 and during 2012, um, I was working for quite a few places, so um, that was kind of the on the road years where we went to a few different places. So um, Scotty Bullwinkle had a show that we did. We did a APW States, um, which has gotten some really bad press since then, but that's another story. Um, and then we went to RCW. We had a stint there. That was amazing. That was one of the best promotions that I had worked for at the time. I had a lot of fun there. But yeah, so that was all kind of going on with Livewire too. So that was probably the time where I was the most active in the ring. I mean, it seemed like every weekend or every other weekend I was doing a show. Um, Damon Rashad actually and I went on the road together a lot back then. So we would travel around to different shows and we'd bring people with us like Kenley or later on Fireman or any of those guys. Coleman traveled a lot with us back
And at this point, you know, from a personal standpoint, I start noticing that in the ring, you're getting better and better each and every show, and it's starting to build up. And you know, you're working your way up the card. You're having matches in the main event, even at least at Livewire, like and traveling more, like you said. And then Livewire goes away for a little while,
then. Yep.
and all these other shows they start coming to an end. Like just seems like with everyone that goes to APW, they stop. It seems like everyone's story down there.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of they work a lot of different venues down there,
Hmm.
and I'm not here specifically to badmouth anyone, but you know a lot of it doesn't really. It's not the product's not designed for the fans to really carry anything over to the next show.
Right.
So I mean, you may be the tag champions just on a whim at some point in time. I mean, it's really just these very singular shows. But then, eventually they kind of started doing some cool things while we were there. Damon Rashad and I did a tag team called Pride and Prejudice there. Um, and a couple other places actually won the tag titles and held on to them for a little while. They did a uh, like an 8-man cage match then, so that was kind of the height of APW Statesboro, from what I understand. As to anything that happened, after that, I can't really attest to because I haven't been back.
And you said you enjoyed your stay with RCW,
Oh yeah, we
which
got to work Rick Steiner. That
oh,
was amazing. We got to learn a little bit from Honky Tonk Man. He was there, um, and they were booking Rick Steiner every show. I mean, he was mainstay.
oh yeah,
And yeah, I mean, I can tell you probably one of the moments that really sticks out to me is we did this angle. I was there as David Yale. The that crowd just ate that character up. Uh, I had I was doing the whole, you know, just better than this audience in every way, smarter than you in every way.
right.
Breaking out the thesaurus for the promos and stuff like that. And I remember a fan, and I have a picture of this too. A fan actually made this sign, and it was a really long sign. You couldn't even read it from far away, but they had used the the most eloquent language that they possibly could to tell me that they hated me, and I thought that was great. We did an angle there where they gave away a Yeti cooler.
Mhm.
And so David Yale was upset he didn't win the Yeti cooler, so I come out and like attacked the sponsor, and that kind of led into a match. And Rick Steiner came out and then kind of cleared the ring, and we did a 6-man tag, and it was really cool. It was just some really creative ways to involve the characters in the show and keep it fresh. So I think that show is definitely going to be missed.
So Rick Steiner, an actual, globally known superstar, former multi-time world champion. Any nerves or just a
Oh,
typical
tons,
match?
tons, because the way they did it there is they kind of did the face locker room, heel locker room deal.
Yeah.
But there was a set of bleachers in between the two. So if you wanted to get from one locker room to the other, you just walk under the bleachers. It was huge bleachers, so you could easily walk under them. And so we walked down to the film, and it's me and Rashad and one of the other guys that was on the team. I can't remember his name. I had never met him before, and I was like, so it's an honor to meet you, Rick. You know the fact that we get to be in the ring with you is great, man. And he was very cool. He was like, oh yeah, he was like, I'm glad to be here and everything. And then I was like, so what do you want to do out there? And we uh, we figured out what the finish was going to be, and that was it. He was like, all right, guys, well let's do it, and that was it.
Wow.
And so then the nerves were crazy. So uh, Rick Steiner was the hot tag, of course.
Yeah.
Um, he gets the hot tag, and I believe the hot tag was made to. It was him and Rashad in the ring. He comes in and just knocks Rashad across the ring. Now, and not a shoot either. I mean, it was Rashad was selling for him, but I mean, you're going to oversell for Rick Steiner.
Yeah.
So he comes over and he picks me up, because he had told me to stay down for some reason. I can't remember. I guess they had another spot. He comes over, picks me up, and he winds a punch back and he says, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And so it was one of the lightest punches I'd ever received. I thought this guy was going to be stiff. So, I mean, I just kept feeding to him and, took quite a few bumps from the guy. I was having the time of my life. But I have to this day really wondered like what would have happened if I said no.
Yeah. I mean, would he just punched you anyways, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was really an option. He already had the hand wound up, and he did the bark, he and we
Uh,
cleared the ring and everything. It was great.
Now I feel like if it was Scott, that might not would have been as soft of a punch.
Probably not. It probably wouldn't have went near as well. I mean, just being honest. But it
I
would
mean,
have been entertaining.
yeah. I mean, I love the guy's promos, but I feel like it would have been a way stiffer match though, right there. All right, and RCW, that was where?
That was in Claxton, I believe. They did two different venues, but I want to say that the main one they did was in Claxton, Georgia. Um, and they had a really nice venue there, but it ended up it was a like a local rec center, and I think basketball season ended up kind of kicking them out of there. And I don't think they ever got it back or found a permanent venue. But they
Mm,
did one other venue as well. I don't know if they ever did any more shows, but it's a shame because they had a really nice setup.
something to look into if they ever are able to get back going. Cause that sounds, I've seen a lot of people from the area go down there. I've seen Ken, Charlie, even Parker go down there a couple of times. So
Yeah, I mean it was a fun show. There were some there were a lot of ways to learn on that show. And what I mean by that is there was like a wide array of talent. So, you had guys with very little experience. You had some kind of middle of the road guys. You had some mid carders, and you had some like some good names like Fireman was there. Some good local names in the southeast.
yeah,
But then you also had like guys like Honky Tonk Man and Rick Steiner and folks like that. So you had some kind of legends there too. So it was a really good learning environment um, from a wrestling standpoint.
all right. So after RCW is done, Livewire is done, APW is done. Where do you go from there?
Well, that was sort of around the time frame. So it was end of 2012 when I remember hearing that Flatline was coming back to Patriots Park.
Okay.
So I messaged Chris Wiggins, who was one of the owners, him and Daniel May, and I said, well, if you want my presence on the show, or you want me to come down there, I'd be happy to. Most of what he had seen of me was as Jason Gold, and I'll be honest, and this is very a public thing now. At the last Flatline event, we sort of addressed this at the end of the show. Is Chris Wiggins and I were not very good friends at the time, to put it lightly. So I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of that, to come from sending that message. And when he said, "Would you be interested in, doing something other than wrestling?" I was immediately very offended because it was like, okay, well, you're saying I'm not good enough to be on your product. But, honestly, that was probably the best thing that could have happened, considering. Um, because I came in essentially to begin with as a consultant. Just sort of, uh, I would go up to the top. Nobody knew why I was there other than just to hang out. And I had a notebook, and I would watch every match. And I would look at things like what kind of reaction did each competitor get when they came through the curtain? Were they able to keep that reaction going during the match? How did the match flow? How did the show itself go? Because one of the critiques I gave them on those early shows was that the shows kind of felt like individual segments, 7 or 8 individual segments, and not a product,
Right.
cohesive show. So I would type up all those notes and I'd send them to Daniel and Chris at the end of the event, and nobody knew I was there doing it, and or why I was doing it. Uh, so kind of from there, they looked at it and they were like, "This guy has some very valuable input for us." So from there, things uh, just kind of escalated. They said, "Do you want to come in and do some booking with us?" And so I came in and I went to a booking meeting with them and I started doing their production as well. And then it sort of took off so fast.
What was the mindset in a booking meeting at Flatline?
Um, well, I think that when we first when they first started, I think the I think the mindset was kind of, let's just go off of what we know, let's
Mhm.
bring in guys that we know can do a good job, and that was it. I think that was as far as it went at that time because no one had started thinking about doing storylines or seasons, as we eventually kind of called them amongst ourselves. Uh, there had been no March of Champions. No one had even thought that up yet. So the build up to the very first one was incredible. Just the fact that we were able to get the first one off the ground is still mind blowing to me. So at that time, it was very much just, let's put on the next show, and there wasn't a whole lot of forward thinking at that point.
Okay. And Parker was the first champion, right?
Yep. So there was a tournament. Brandon Parker was the first champion. Um, he had Tommy Bonds as his manager. They were getting over really well. There was a ton of heat for both of those guys. I mean, as soon as they walked out, Tommy Bonds was just a guy that would draw heat immediately to anyone. And Parker was doing an excellent job back then with the championship as well. So that was definitely one of the major pluses uh, for those early days of Flatline.
Right. Where did Tommy Bonds actually come from?
Well, he actually had some experience in WCW. There's YouTube footage out there of him and someone else versus the Outsiders actually from
Okay.
WCW. Um, so that's definitely worth a watch, even if it's just going to be for a few laughs. Um, and so he had some kind of experience in the business, and I think he lives kind of near the park. And so he had gotten in touch with Chris and Daniel. He was already there when I came in, so we didn't have a whole lot of interaction at that point. We would go on to have more later on as I started doing their production work, and we would work together and on backstage segments and things like that.
Right. And Flatline, they're known for their top-notch productions, as you said you were love, and the video screen, which is something that the only places I know of that really has it would be PWX that I personally have been to, but the video screen adds so much to an event. And like I was talking with Mikey about it, it just adds so much and it gives more in depth to what the fans can see, more build up. There's so many more avenues you can go to
Oh yeah,
with each match.
it adds so much to the show. I mean, you've got the advantage number one, you can promote your sponsors on there. Yeah, and they like that. If a sponsor comes to your show and sees, that they can get their logo on two HD giant screens throughout the show, that's going to be a lot bigger of a deal for them than, I get to be a tiny logo on a flyer one time. Um, so there's that. Then there's the element that adds to the show where you can do entrance videos. You can present an environment that's more close to WWE, which is what your casual fan, is used to.
Right.
And you'd be surprised how many people, even in the environment today, aren't even aware that there's other wrestling outside of WWE, or, either they've heard about it, never checked into it, or just haven't heard about it.
Right.
So, I mean, you still have to take that into consideration. And then, of course, yeah, doing the backstage segments and things like that. That adds a lot of stuff to your show because there's certain segments and certain storyline ideas that just don't go over well in front of a live in-ring audience, but play out very well on a screen. So that's a huge help as well.
I think one of my favorite ones. I was actually there when it was filmed, was the Adrian Davis getting thrown into a closet
Oh
by
man.
Parker. That was, and you can't do that if you don't have the video screens. You can't just put up a prop closet in a gym somewhere. Those things you just can't do. But you guys were able to do that and set yourself apart from so many places, and it raised the bar pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, going into those, my mindset on it was very much that I didn't want to be predictable uh, with those backstage segments and with the show in general. I mean, normally you go to an indie wrestling show, you're going to see six, seven, 8 matches, and you're going to go home. But we really wanted to sort of make it unpredictable. We would show like a guy on his way to the ring, maybe for an advertised match. He gets attacked in the back. That's just things you can't do without that element of it. And I definitely don't want to take all the credit because we had a huge help in Brandon Dawson who filmed most of those.
Right.
Daniel Main was right there alongside me working on a lot of that production stuff. He was a huge asset to it as well. And then Casey Wiggins was also a huge help to us, in a lot of different ways. She's a Photoshop expert, and so I'm not a huge Photoshop person. I'm a lot better with moving images as opposed to still images. So uh, between me, who was great with video, Daniel, who's good at both, and Casey, who's great at Photoshop, so we had three people that could really, kind of collaborate on different ideas. It spread the work out.
And safe to say, I think Brandon Dawson, he's worked for you guys, he's worked for me. I do firmly believe, hands down, maybe one of the best, if not the best, to have at a wrestling show, filming any wrestling event, backstage segment, um, film you playing chess, anything that involves needing a video camera.
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I want to talk about how I met Brandon Dawson and
Okay.
how he got into that because this is a cool story. So a friend of mine that had done some work with us and kind of helped us out. She was going to film school at ASU or whatever they were calling it at that moment in time. uh, and she was like, "Well, I have this friend, and he'd be interested in coming out to your events." So I'm like, okay, and we were having a hard time really finding somebody who knew how to film wrestling because a lot of
Right.
people I knew that had camera experience were used to filming like plays or stuff for like short films or things like that. Well, Brandon Dawson walks in the front door at Patriots Park and he's got on his signature kind of beanie hat, you know, and he's got on a CM Punk best in the world shirt. And I immediately knew this was going to work out. When I first saw the guy's footage, I mean, it's just that he's so good at filming anything, but what makes him so great at filming wrestling is he's a fan and he gets it. And I mean, honestly, I think he's the best cameraman in the business.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. He definitely up there. He moves around, gets the angles. Not a complaint about the guy, and he's professional.
Yeah,
So
and I used to say all the time, I was like, our hard cam's only here because Brandon Dawson can't be in two places at once.
yeah. So I mean, he does make the job tons easier.
Oh yeah, any of the matches that I've ever edited, for a lot of our YouTube stuff, I like to do a two camera edit. So the best shot's going to be from the mobile cam. And then, if your mobile cam's got to move, then you really don't want to put that out there. So really, that's the only thing we used the hard cam for was to fill in for the shots that weren't, that weren't amazing that Dawson was getting, where, the workers in the ring might move and he's got to go, to a different corner or something like that.
Right.
Uh, so that was really and if you go back and watch any of those matches, there's not a lot of hard cam in most of them. and that's just because his shots were great.
Right. And you guys actually did produce a DVD, the March of Champions show. Um, will there be more of those, or was that pretty much one and done? Or
I'll tell you, that's definitely one and done. Daniel Main and I spent, and this is not an exaggeration, we spent at least 27 or 30 hours working on that DVD. Um, because what happened is we were really trying to get them ready so we could have them on sale at the next show.
mm-hmm.
And so we were in a deadline to get the master file to the production company. Because those DVDs were excellently produced after we got done with them because we sent them to a really legitimate company. They put some awesome inserts in there and some really nice DVD cases and some really nice graphics on the discs. I mean, it looks like a professional DVD. Um, but it was just such a really difficult time to get it to work because we were filming everything in full HD 1080p, and so we then had to sort of reduce 3 hours of 1080p content to fit on a on a standard def DVD. So without compromising the quality of the video, with including backstage segments and the promo videos that aired. So we weren't willing to compromise the quality of the show for the DVD. And because of that, it took a lot of work and countless hours recording audio for the commentary.
Oh, and you guys did all the commentary after the
Yeah,
event. Okay.
yeah. So it was myself and Lionel Howard. We did all the commentary on it, and yeah, it was all post production commentary. Uh, I can't even imagine trying to do live commentary in that gym, with all the echo and everything in there from the crowd. I mean, it would have been
Right.
terrible. But we got some pretty decent, clean audio for most of that.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I have watched most of it, and it's pretty good DVD. Are there any left, or are they pretty much all sold out?
We actually do have some left. The last time that I talked to Daniel Main, there was a possibility of uh, maybe giving the rest of that inventory to High Spots and selling it through them. But I, don't want to step on any toes or get in trouble or anything. I don't know where they are with that.
All right. Well, if you get an update, let me know. We'll post a link if they're for sale or anything like that. If anybody's interested. Um.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great matches on there. I mean, that
Oh
was
yeah.
that was the biggest show that I feel like we ever did from a standpoint of how good the card was top to bottom and just the amount of people that came out. So that show was actually the attendance record for Flatline for all time.
Oh, okay. How much do you know? Have an exact number on that,
I
or
believe it was 425. It was somewhere in that ballpark.
okay? And that's for all events or just wrestling?
Well, so that was Flatline's record
Oh, okay, okay.
for their attendance. I'm not sure about Patriots Park. I'm sure they've had
Um,
more people in there at some point.
I was about to say, I'm sure they've had like some kind of little league basketball. That's all right. Being in Flatline, you get to participate in an actual cage match
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So that was a result of the Rapture storyline that we ran, which I think was an amazing angle. Booking it was a nightmare,
Mm,
but I mean that really was. We would go to a booking meeting, and all four of us would walk out of there just hating, even having to do it again because we just couldn't stand it because you had a faction that had essentially five members. So when you've got 7 or 8 matches on a card and five people are in a faction, so either you've got to have a lot of tag matches or a big, 8 or 10 man tag,
right,
or you've got to have some people sit out. And a lot of the guys that we had at the time weren't really a fan of driving. A lot of this guys, some of us were local, but some of us were driving, 2 and 3 hours. So to drive 2 or 3 hours and just to come out to ringside, a lot of guys really weren't interested in doing that, or just to participate in like a backstage segment. Um, but I'm glad that they stuck through it because it was a really popular angle, and I don't know that there's really a promotion in the Southeast that didn't take notice of it.
The whole backstage angle, that brings up again, added opportunity for workers to get their face shown, but at the same time, a lot of people, if they were on WWE, they would probably they'd get paid around the same amount, but on an indie level, a lot of people are not looking to travel just to do a backstage segment, pay or not.
Right, yeah.
Um, was that like a major problem for guys, or like outside of this particular angle, or?
Well, it really wasn't. I think, I have to give credit really to pretty much everybody that ever worked on our shows because we did things very differently from any other indie show that I'm aware of. Um, a lot of guys then would come in from like APW or Anarchy was still running at the time, or they would come up, down from like North Carolina or any of those places, and that they would come in and it would be, we're all kind of doing business as usual, but they're looking around like, what is this? And so, a lot of times if we brought in a new talent, I try to meet them at the door, just kind of explain what's going on. A lot of times we would do a backstage segment with a new guy to introduce him to the crowd before he goes out,
Mm,
because those fans did not take well to newcomers at all. They were very much into the mainstay roster of Flatline. So, one of the things that would happen a lot is we bring in a new guy and the crowd would do a "Who are you?" chant, you know, and that's kind of nerve wracking for them, and it's kind of difficult for them to work their character in, unless they're a heel, in which case it gives them some extra heat. But
right.
uh, you know, uh, it was a very different atmosphere. You go and grab a guy and be like, hey, I need you to come with me. We're going to film this backstage segment. And they're like, is this going to be on DVD or something like that? And I'm like, no, it's going to air between match one and two. Like the crowd out there is going to be able to see it. And they were just kind of like, what? So that was it was different. It was,
and,
it, it
and you
was a
guys
different,
had and y'all had to film and edit same day
yeah, a
for all
lot of
these.
times we would get to the gym around noon. I can't say I was always there at that time, but that was when a lot of us tried to get there. But back then, in the early days, we weren't able to set up anything on the floor until 4 p.m. It was reserved for basketball.
Mm,
So our shows at the time started at 8. Um, so we would get in there at 4, and bell time was 8 p.m. So between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, we had to put up the entire set, the ring, um, have a uh, production meeting, shoot every backstage segment we were going to do that night, and render it and get it on basically on the computer, ready to go to line up with the card. Uh, and so that was a kind of a nightmare process. But what we would do is Dawson and I would go. We would take an SD card. We would film an angle. We'd give it to Daniel. Daniel would go ahead and start rendering it. And while he's rendering that and getting the video ready and finishing, putting on the finishing touches, we would be shooting the next segment. So it was hectic every time. You can ask, if you have any of the guys that worked with us on any of those on here. I mean, they'll tell you it was hectic every month. It never got any easier.
all right. Um, and March of Champions, 2015, 2016 would end up being, for now, the last show for Flatline. Um, is there any relief, or is it sadness, or
Um, all of the above.
yeah?
So, after the last show, um, a lot of people have probably seen this picture. So Casey, Chris, Daniel, and myself were the last four people in the building. Um, and we took that picture. Wade Adams actually took that picture for us, so he was there too. Uh, and so he took the picture of the four of us. As far as I know, that's the only group photo of the four of us that exists. Uh, and I just kind of stood there and just kind of took it all in. Like, hey, this might be the last time I'm ever in this room that has meant a lot to me. Um, and then, that was an emotional night. It was just uh, from the time I got there until I went to sleep, and even probably all the next day. It was very, very emotional day. Uh, I'm very relieved to not be doing production right now because we ran a monthly show. So we would do a show on the first Saturday. Either the next weekend, we would either be booking, which would take 4 to 8 hours, or I would be working on the next show. If we didn't book that weekend, we'd book the next weekend, which would give me less time to prepare for the next show because if we were bringing in a new guy, then he had to have an entrance video. We never, that was one of the things is we always tried to avoid having those sort of lulls in production. So if we brought a new guy in, we wanted to have a video for him always. And we pretty much stuck to that. Um, so we never wanted anybody to look like they were just there for like a one-time appearance or to be a jobber or anything like that. Um, so if a new guy was coming in, we had to have a video for them. I would do a recap video at the time for the previous show. So the show would open with that. Every so often, we would design a new intro video for the show. I mean, it was just a lot of work that really went into each and every one of those events. And so I'm glad right now to not be doing that, to be honest. But I do miss it. I miss that atmosphere. There was a big sense of family amongst a lot of people there. I'm not going to act like everyone got along all the time because we know that's just not the reality of an indie wrestling locker room
Oh yeah,
or probably any locker room anywhere. Uh,
right.
but there was a real sense of family atmosphere. The crowd knew what we were about, and that's what they came there to see. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of relationships that I sort of solidified at Flatline that that I still have. So that aspect of it is great. So it's both, and I'm also glad to not be doing production right now.
Um, do you have any like since that was in March, and it's at the time of this, it's currently May. Do you have anything you're currently trying to keep busy with since then, or are you just enjoying the time away?
Well, so the day before Flatline shut down, I made a Facebook post and I said, basically just wanted to thank everybody if tomorrow was my last day in the wrestling business. And I'll be honest with you, that night when I went home and went to sleep, I was pretty convinced that I never wanted anything to do with it again. I was kind of done with it. I was like, I've been in the business for almost 10 years now in some capacity or another. Maybe it's just time to move on.
Right.
But I started to miss it almost immediately. So I'm doing a few things. So one of the things that was great about it was just me personally. I'm going back to school. I'm thinking about doing sort of my own podcast maybe in the future. That seems to be a popular thing right now. But what anyone listening to this probably would be really interested in is I actually am doing sort of the same type of thing I was doing at Flatline for another promotion that's coming up starting in August, and that's VPW Viral Pro Wrestling. But the great thing about that is those shows aren't going to be as often. It's not going to be this monthly, grind that I have to put myself into. So, it'll be sort of one step at a time. We'll get to work on the show, complete it. I'll have a break, and then we can kind of collaborate on the next one. So, I'm really looking forward to that, and that's going to be August 13th. Will be the first show.
All right, and have a link in the description for the viral pro wrestling.
Perfect. I'm always trying to promote.
Yeah. Did you ever have a city that you said Patriots Park felt like home, but did you ever have a city that you most liked performing in, like besides Patriots Park?
It would have to be Thompson. I'm not technically from Thompson, but I went to school there. Um, when we were wrestling in Charlie Anarchy's yard back in 2004 2005. That was in Thompson, and then I got the to have the great opportunity to return and work for Fireman for his shows in Thompson at Sweetwater Gym. So I would have to say, if there's a city that I have to pick, it would just be Thompson because of that hometown sort of feel and just the connection I have with that place. But Patriots Park still got it still wins in the venue category.
Those Thompson shows, those were some huge events that the firemen has put on out there. Very huge shows.
Oh yeah, there's been some amazing talent. I got to work with Hurricane Shane Helms at one of those shows when we were doing the Rapture uh, faction. So I mean that was incredible. Um, I almost got to get a stink face from Rikishi, but there were some scheduling issues, so I'm really bummed about that. That never got to happen.
I
I
think
don't know
this
if that's weird or not.
might be the first time I've ever heard someone bummed that they didn't get Rikishi's ass in their face.
Well, I mean, it would have been a great YouTube moment.
Well, yeah, but it's still your face.
That's true, but how many indie workers do you know that can say they took a stink face from Rikishi?
Well, yeah, yeah, true, true, true on that. Um, all right. Since you've been in the business for a while, what has been your favorite match from a fan standpoint that's been in the business?
Um, so you're not talking about that I was in, just in general.
Right.
Oh man. Wow. I've watched so many great matches at Patriots Park or otherwise. Um, so right now, I'm going to tell you the first match that came to my mind
Okay.
when you said something, and that was Samoa Joe versus Cedric Alexander at PWX. I'm a huge Samoa Joe fan though, so that definitely influenced that. Um, I met him there. That was just before he got signed by NXT, and I was like, man, I really hope the Fed signs you. And he just kind of gave me this little sideways smile, and then a few weeks later, he showed up on NXT, so that was great. And that kind of led in, that kind of led into, he's a champ now, so that was awesome. But notable mentions would be that War Games match that we had at Flatline. That was Team Flatline versus the Rapture. There was some amazing talent in that match. I mean, I just survived through it, but everybody else, they really. I think everybody got some awesome shine in that match,
Mm.
um, and that one's special to me too because I got to start it off 1-on-1 with Brandon Parker, who I actually had my very first match at Patriots Park with. So that was incredible. That was just like everything coming full circle for me there.
Okay. What about before you got into business? Quote unquote, smartened up. What was one of your favorites then? You
Oh
know.
man, um, uh, Dean Malenko versus Chris Jericho for the TV title. I remember watching that match 100 times as a kid. DDP versus anybody for anything. I must have watched that him and Raven um, uh, Bowery death match that they had or whatever. I've probably seen that 100 times. I had a VHS copy of the Spring Stampede that was on, and I watched it over and over again. I was a huge fan. I'm still a huge fan of him versus Goldberg at Halloween Havoc. Um, I thought that's one of the best matches Bill Goldberg's ever had. One of the best matches DDP has had too. That was good. Um, him and Kurt Hennig for the U.S. title, Starcade '97. Uh, although the match that everybody remembers from that show is, of course, Sting versus Hogan. And I still, to this day, feel like Sting had the best entrance in the history of the business to that match.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he had a laser show. I mean, nobody has the laser show.
Well, I mean, everyone had one in the Impact Zone back in 2004, pretty much.
Yeah, well, that's true, but nobody saw that.
Well, yeah. It was on Fox Sports Net, so nobody pretty much watched that.
Yeah, that predates my TNA watching. As a matter of fact, the first time I watched TNA was, I think the paper. It was all pay per view at the time, and it was when Jeff Hardy first showed up.
I think that
Um,
might have been 2003, or actually, he made like one appearance and then just like went away and then came back
yeah,
actual
I don't
full
remember
time for a while. I don't
to
remember the
to
exact
be honest.
timeline.
But
Uh,
since we're on that subject, I definitely have to say AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe. Um, the both of the triple threats that they had were just incredible. I mean, the
oh yeah.
very first time I saw their first triple threat match, I had never seen anything like that. I couldn't believe it. I was astonished. My eyes were glued to the screen.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. Did you feel like anybody on the indie scene could come close to that triple threat match?
Oh yeah. I gotta give shout out to Anthony Henry. I mean that guy. Uh, he's a machine. There's no other way to describe him. He's a machine. Uh, I've I've never seen the guy tired in my life. Um, I've thought he was tired before, but he wasn't. It was just like you never see the guy tired. He works hard. I'll tell you one of the first experiences I ever had with Anthony Henry. I don't think he remembers this, but I walked in to Gold's Gym. This is probably in 2012ish. I walked in. He's on the elliptical. I waved to him. Hey, man. I go get on the elliptical. I did like 40, 45 minutes of cardio. Okay. I get off the elliptical. I go do all my weights for that day. I think it may have been it may have been leg day. I can't remember what I was working out that day. Did all my weights, go back to the back, change clothes, come back out. Henry's still on the elliptical. He hasn't moved. He hasn't slowed down. Elliptical when I got there. He was still on the same elliptical, going at the same or a faster pace when I left. I've never forgotten that about the guy. I mean, he earns it. He puts the time
Oh
in.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Other guys, I mean, Cedric Alexander might be the greatest wrestler in the world. The guy's amazing. Uh, Ethan Case, uh, James Drake, so underrated. Rob Killjoy is fantastic. I mean, I really could go on and gush about like different guys I've had the experience of working with. I mean, you take a Shane Hex on. That's a guy that you know just wasn't to be very blunt, he wasn't used right for a long time.
Right.
Uh, and he put on some amazing matches at Flatline. And I mean that guy is so versatile. He can work with anybody. You can put him in there with somebody who hasn't been in the business for a week. You could put him in there with a guy like Anthony Henry, and I mean he'll adapt to their style and what they're going to do. So I mean I could probably go on and on for 3 hours about different talents that I worked with that I really admire.
All right. We're gonna play a little name association here. I'll say a name. You first thing that comes to mind. Doesn't have to be one word. Just be
Okay.
the first basic opinion of them. Got a few names down here for you.
Okay.
First one being Charlie Anarchy.
Uh, Longtime friend.
Okay. David Coleman.
Oh man. Coleman's a guy that I had a lot of chemistry with. We had great chemistry. There was one year where we probably had 20 matches on the road or otherwise. Some of those were at Livewire, and I mean, I think we just really clicked in the ring.
Darkness.
Um, wow. I'm having a hard time with that one. Just, I guess the first thing that came to my mind with when you said darkness was his entrance. Darkness's entrance was always the most incredible thing. I remember being in kind of in the crowd one time for it, and I really understood his appeal then because it was just it brought such an energy to the room.
And the later days just giving away mutilated baby dolls in his
Yeah,
entrances.
that was weird. But I mean, it's darkness, so
Well, it fits. All right. Chris Dickens.
oh man, busy is the first word that came to my mind. Uh, we have a very interesting kind of storied history that's probably for another time, but he produced a really cool show for us at Flatline, sort of our um, sort of YouTube show, and he did some great episodes of that. So, um, I really appreciate his work on that. He's one of the busiest people that I know.
Brandon Parker.
Oh man, friend. That wasn't always the case. We haven't always seen eye to eye, but um, my first match at Patriots Park, he put me over. He probably didn't want to, but we had some great matches together and some great chemistry.
All right. Brian Baldwin.
um, the first thing that came to my mind was cell phone because he always used to come out like he was talking on his cell phone, and I can remember in a match with Six, he just kind of took it from him during the call and just snapped it in half. So that was an awesome moment.
Tim Blackman.
Oh man, you were really trying to go for the heat on this one. Uh, when one of my first experiences in independent wrestling was a very unfortunate event between him and a referee at Bernie Ward, where he pretty much assaulted, shot on a referee during a match, uh, and it was a guy that was underage too, so that put a very sour taste in my mouth, kind of for sort of of the business. Um, and for him in general. But that was 11 years ago, so I have no hard feelings against the guy or anything. And from what I understand, he's doing pretty well. I've seen him in public since then. We've buried the hatchet, so I wish him well.
All right. Wade Adams.
First thing that comes to my mind is I hate you, Wade, because I say that to him every time I see him. We have a very interesting relationship. So Wade is a really funny guy. Um, but like our senses of humor are so far off that like there are people that think I'm funny and people that think he's funny, but I don't think we necessarily think each other are funny. So he'll make a joke, and I'll be like, "Wait, I hate you," and I make a point to say it to him every time I see him. But he's an awesome guy. He uh, he and I just have a pretty cool relationship.
All right. Jeremy Cruz.
Oh man, Cruz has been a great friend for a long time. He just, you know, throughout I guess from the whole time I've been in the business, I've been able to see him kind of also grow and things like that. We got into the business around the same time. So when I think about Cruz, uh, I really think about his early days when he was an announcer and he was like super skinny. And, everybody was like, this guy wants to wrestle. He's never going to do that. But I mean, he proved us wrong. I mean, he's been in some really good matches, and I've had some really good matches against him.
All right. And last one. Chris Wiggins.
I almost felt like that was going to be the last one. uh, Wiggins and I have not gotten along uh, over the years, but Flatline was a different story, and we really teamed up and did some amazing work together there. Uh, so I'm thankful for that opportunity.
All right. Um, what games you playing right now?
um, I'm a big RPG fan. I'm actually playing the PC release that just.
What games you playing right now?
um, I'm a big RPG fan. I'm actually playing the PC release that just came out of Final Fantasy IX.
Okay.
Uh, so I'm really enjoying that. It's a very old school game. For anybody under like the age of 20 listening to this podcast, Final Fantasy IX was this game that came out in 1999 on PlayStation. But it's really good. And then playing a little bit of StarCraft 2. Um, doing a lot of the co-op on that. I'm really into like co-op games.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm still working on The Witcher 3 actually. That game's so long, I have over like 110 hours on it.
Whew. All right. Any final words? Um, social medias or anything like
Um,
that you want to put out there?
Definitely. I'm trying to promote this upcoming show, so definitely give Viral Pro Wrestling, a follow on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Um, if you're wanting to check out some good talent, then that's definitely a show you want to check out. Uh, a lot of the guys, a lot of the roster from Flatline, I know a lot of those guys and I trust them. So, a lot of those guys are going to be doing some of our shows. So, the object is definitely not to be a Flatline copy. We would definitely want to be our own thing. But a lot of those guys are going to be there, and I'm pretty excited about that. And it's some of the best talent in the Southeast. Guys like Rob Killjoy, James Drake, a lot of guys we've mentioned already. Ethan Case, Ken Lee, Owen Knight, who is to me like if I had to pick like a up and coming VIP, it would probably be like a rookie of the year or something like that. It would probably be Owen Knight. That guy's so talented, and every time you see him, he's getting better.
All right. Well, I think that about does it for us this week. Um, Viral Pro Wrestling on Facebook. Link will be in the description. Um, I'm Ryan Rain, host of the RainStorm, here with Caleb Kitchens this week.